Hello, everybody. Welcome to another hour. Look, there's the ocean. Leia's here. Leia. We are reading George MacDonald, a book called Sir Gibbie. George MacDonald was C.S. Lewis's mentor, spiritual mentor. And so I love these books. All of his books have changed my life in profound ways. Because, you can read all this stuff and try to apply it to your life. But when you see someone else's life, like a saint, if I grew up and didn't have access to read all the saints, I wasn't taught to read them. But now, thank God he snuck them in through George MacDonald's writings and C.S. Lewis's and, like the modern saints, if you will. We're all called to be saints. It's okay, Leia, hold on. You can go that far and no farther. All right, so I have a stand here. Hold on, I got it. Make sure that her leash doesn't go further. Okay. So, this is a book from the 1800s that was written... Oh, look at the ray, right? He's Scottish, and anyway, that's enough. You can read about him if you want in the description, or there's a link to the PDF. You can go ahead and read it yourself. But and there's other people that have read it with Scottish accents that I just love and adore. But I just wanted it on my YouTube channel, I guess. I was going to read it myself again, so I just read it with you all. All right, let me grab the book. There's some Scottish parts that are not intelligible to people nowadays unless you understand the dialect. And so those are translated by someone else in a thing that we have to buy. And so I'm just going to do my best to say it because people from all different languages come to my channel. And I have to say something. Well, I don't have to. I'd like to. All right, hold on. I'm sitting on... Anyway, it was raining out here the other day, so... I have something plastic in my bag to sit on. All right, so here, I do this so people that want to just go straight to the book can fast forward to... I'll wave the book when I start, usually. All right, okay. Cover me in sunshine. All right, so welcome everybody here. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. It's just like a miracle that you're here and that you get to experience this book and we get to be in nature. It takes a long time to get up here, and often I'm like, are you sure you want me to go to the very top, And so it's just like, persevere in your life and come to these expansive places, right? The hawks are flying right over there. What is it, Leia? Oh, she sees a little dung beetle thing. Come here, Leia. I know that's your nature to go want to hunt that, but... All right. So this chapter is called Adrift. And Sir Gibbie is this boy that is mute, and he stands on his tiptoes. If you know these signs, then you could probably, I'm a psychologist in my day job. You can definitely diagnose this nowadays, looking backwards, but I'm just not going to put a label on it. But he can't speak. And anyway, he does far more in this world than many speaking people do, if we say it like that. So let's just enter in and trust the story will teach us what we need in our lives these days, or just be present with it. Not what we need, whatever God wants, God's will be done. I welcome people of all faiths. So anyway, he gathered as many as he could carry and ate them. He just found some turnips he hadn't eaten, and ate them as he went along. Happily, no agricultural person encountered him for some distance, though Gibbie knew no special cause to congratulate himself upon that, having not the slightest conscience of offense in what he did. He didn't know. It's like, if we saw some wild strawberries here, we could pick them. They're because they're just on government land or whatever, protected land. But These are what farmers had planted, and he didn't understand that. He understood if it's... Anyway, it'll say so. His notions of property were all associated with well-known, visible, or neighboring owners, and in the city he would never have dreamed of touching anything that was not given him, except it lay plainly a lost thing. But here, where everything was so different, and he saw none of the signs of ownership to which he was accustomed, the idea of property did not come to him. Here everything looked lost, or on the same category with the chips and parings and crusts that were thrown out in the city and become common property. Besides the love which had hitherto rendered covetousness impossible, had here no object whose presence might have suggested a doubt, to supply in a measure the lack of knowledge. Hunger, instead, was busy in his world. I trust there were few farmers along the road who would have found fault with him for taking one or two, but none, I suspect, would have liked to see him with all the turnips he could carry, eating them like a very rabbit. Hold on, excuse me. You know now, I need to put Kleenexes in here for when I tear up. I haven't teared up yet. Oh well. I don't think I have. Leia, no, you don't need it. Come here. Come here. Good girl. Come drink your water. Look, come here. Good girl. Eating them like a very rabbit. They were too near a city to look upon such a spectacle with indifference. Gibbie made no attempt to hide his spoil. Whatever could have given birth to the sense that caution would be necessary would have prevented him from taking it. While yet busy, he came upon a little girl feeding a cow by the roadside. She saw how he ate the turnips and offered him a bit of oatmeal bannock. He received it gladly and with beaming eyes offered her a turnip. She refused it with some indignation. Gibbie, disappointed but not ungrateful, resumed his tramp, eating his bannock. He came soon after to a little stream that ran into the great river. For a few moments he eyed it very doubtfully, thinking it must, like the kennels along the sides of the streets, be far too dirty to drink of. But the way it sparkled and sang most unscientific reasons soon satisfied him, and he drank and was refreshed. He had still 2 turnips left, but after the bannock he did not seem to want them, and stowed them in the ends of the sleeves of his jacket, folded back into great cuffs. Those were his pockets that he made. Leia's exploring everywhere. Come here, Leia, just not behind this stand, please. Come on, come here. Come here, good girl. Come here, Leia. She asked to come with, you know. Cover me in sunshine. All day, the cold spring weather continued, with more of the past winter in it than of the coming summer. The sun would shine out. Aw, that's why I just kept singing that song. Someone played it the other day, a part of it. They quoted something that sounded just like it. Anyway, it's some line with cover me in sunshine. The Holy Spirit speaks to me through songs, but I don't always want to get distracted into them. But if they have a message, I just let it unfold, however God wishes. Anyway. The sun would shine out for a few moments with a gray, weary old light, then retreat as if it had tried, but really could not. Once came a slight fall of snow, which, however, melted the moment it touched the earth. See, he had no shoes. He's so poor, he never had shoes. The wind kept blowing cheerlessly by fits, and the world seemed growing tired by the same thing over again so often. At length the air began to grow dusk. Then, first, fears of the darkness, to Gibbie utterly unknown before, and only born of the preceding night, began to make him aware of their existence in the human world, because he had escaped something very treacherous that happened in the city, and he had escaped that a dear person was taken off by these men in a cruel way, just because their egos were offended, which happens in this world, right? To a lesser degree often, just people making fun of you and rejecting you and putting you down and not misunderstanding you and putting down your purpose and trying to keep you from doing the gifts, activating the gifts that are put in you. God put gifts in each of us that are meant to be activated in this world. We all look like this, but we're part of one body, and so we all need each other, Anyway, the sun was out before. Now it's behind the cloud. Let's see if I can put this here. Then the mic's a little further away. But, let's see. We still get the ocean. At length the air began to grow dusk. Okay, so, yeah, he didn't ever fear the darkness before. Began to make him aware of their existence in the human world. They seemed to rise up from his lonely heart. They seemed to descend upon him out of the thickening air. They seemed to catch at his breath and gather behind him as he went. But happily, before it was quite dark, and while he yet could distinguish between objects, he came to the gate of a farmyard. It waked in him the hope of finding some place where he could sleep warmer than in the road, and he clambered over it. Nearest of the buildings to the gate stood an open shed, and he could see the shafts of carts projecting from it. Perhaps in one of those carts, or under it, he might find a place that would serve him to sleep in. He did not yet know what facilities for repose the country affords. But just as he entered the shed, he spied, at the farther corner of it outside, a wooden structure like a small house, and through the arched door of it saw the floor covered with nice-looking straw. He suspected it to be a dog's kennel, and presently the chain lying beside it with a collar at the end satisfied him it was. The dog was absent, and it looked altogether enticing. He crept in and got under as much of the straw as he could heap over him, and fell fast asleep. Vaya, what are you eating? In a few minutes, it seemed to him he was roused by the great voice of a dog in conversation with a boy. The boy seemed, by the sound of the chain, to be fastening the collar on the dog's neck, and presently left him. The dog, which had been on the rampage the whole afternoon, immediately turned to creep in and rest till supper time, presenting to Gibbie, who had drawn himself up at the back of the kennel, the intelligent countenance of a large Newfoundland. I don't know what those dogs look like. Dogs are new to me. This one's pretty much my first dog. Anyway, hold on, Now Gibbie had been honored with the acquaintance of many dogs and the friendship of most of them, for a lover of humanity can hardly fail to be a lover of canines, right? Canidity. Even among dogs, however, there are ungracious individuals, and Gibbie had once or twice been bitten by quadruple worshippers of the respectable. Hence, with the sight of the owner of the dwelling, it dawned upon him that he must be startled to find a stranger in his house, his doghouse, right? And might, regarding him as an intruder rather than a guest, worry him before he had time to explain himself. He darted forward, therefore, to get out, but had scarcely reached the door when the dog put in his nose ready to follow with all he was and had. Gibbie thereupon began a loud barking, as much as to say, "Here I am, please do nothing without reflection." The dog started back in extreme astonishment, his ears erect, and a keen look of question on his sagacious visage. What strange animal, speaking like, and yet so unlike an orthodox dog, could have got into his very chamber? Gibbie, amused at the dog's fright, and assured by his looks that he was both a good-natured and reasonable animal, burst into a fit of merry laughter as loud as his previous barking, and a good deal more musical. The dog evidently liked it better and took it as a challenge to play. After a series of sharp bursts of barking, his eyes flashing straight in at the door and his ears lifted up like two plumes on the top of them, he darted into the kennel and began poking his nose into his visitor. The sun's back out, right? Gibbie fell to petting and kissing. Oh, look. I didn't know why I was wearing this, but I got the intuition to just wear this. I got it the other day, and it's like, I don't know, this morning I was like, is this okay to wear? It was like, I got that verse, greet each other with a holy kiss. Aw, and now the dog is kissing him. That's so sweet. I've never worn this on any video before because it's new. Well, anyway. Okay, and so... Wow. Gibbie fell to patting and kissing and hugging him as if he had been a human. And who can tell, but he was. That's a question mark. Glad of any companion that belonged to the region of the light, and they were friends at once. Mankind had disappointed him, but here was a dog. Gibbie was not the one to refuse mercies, which yet he would not have been content to pray for. So he didn't know to even pray for these kinds of mercies. Thank you, God, for your mercies. For Sir Gibbie getting to kiss this dog and have a friendship with something in this world, even if mankind let him down, right? I was contemplating on the verse this morning. I think it's in Psalm 27. And still Paul sings a song. I covered it. I taught a lesson on it, but those who sow in tears shall reap in joy, right? You know what real joy is when you've sowed in tears. When you sat with Christ on the cross, he sowed in tears and reaped in the joy of resurrection and offered resurrection for the whole of humanity, all of mankind in all time, right? How can that verse has already come true? You know, but not everybody knows it. Only those who have passed on know about the resurrection. Well, I mean, some of us can know in different ways, but sow in tears shall reap in joy, wise man doctrine. That's a band called Steel Pulse. I forgot who was singing the other song. Someone and her daughter, some famous musician and her daughter sing the Cover Me in Sunshine one. One of my platforms suggested it one time when I was putting a reel up of this. I was on a roller coaster with someone, and it was just going down, and the sun was shining on us. And it's like, the one time we thank God for the algorithms that show us those things, right? Otherwise, they're somewhat creepy. But I don't want to judge them. Like, let's just not put a label on them. Anyway, they just are what they are. All right, so let's, he has a friend now, right? So he would not have been content yet to pray for, but both were tired. It doesn't say but both were tired. However, for both had been active that day, and a few minutes of mingled wrestling and endearment, to which perhaps the narrowness of their playground gave a speedier conclusion, contented both, after which they lay side by side in peace, Gibbie with his head on the dog's back, and the dog every now and then turning his head over his shoulder to lick Gibbie's face. That's what this one does to me. She licks our faces. We're like, no, stop. Lele, come on. She likes exploring. I'm glad she came with us today. I almost left her behind. I didn't know this part was in. I forgot there was a dog in this part of the book. I've read it many times before, but anyway, I forget the order of stuff. There's often a dog. There's the one in the Wise Woman too. She uses a shepherd dog. Cover me in sunshine. Come here, can you get out? Can you get out? Leia, come here. Come on. Are you stuck? Good girl. I'm gonna have to take all those briars off of you because you've got a little bit in there. All right. Okay. Oh, let's get the ocean too. I love having the ocean shown. It's just so expansive, right? I just love it. I don't have a rock here. I sat in a little bit of a different place. Let's see if this stick will do. All right, so we get it a little bit up. Okay. So over his shoulder to lick Gibbie's face. Again, he walked. He was waked by approaching steps, and the same moment the dog darted from under him, and with much rattle out of the kennel, in front of which he stood and whined, expectant. It was not quite dark, for the clouds had drifted away, and the stars were shining, so that when he put out his head, he was able to see the dim form of a woman setting down something before the dog, into which he instantly plunged. Come here, lad. His nose, and began gobbling. The sound stirred up all the latent hunger in Gibbie, and he leaped out, eager to have a share. A large wooden bowl was on the ground, and half of its contents of porridge and milk was already gone, for the poor dog had not yet experienced enough to be perfect in hospitality, and had forgotten his guest wants in his own. It was plain that if Gibbie was to have any, he must lose no time in considering the means. Had he a long nose and mouth all in one like him, he would have plunged them in beside the dog's. But the flatness of his mouth, causing the necessity, in the case of such an attempt, of bringing the whole of his face into contact with the food, there was not room in the dish for the two to feed together after the same fashion, so that he was driven to the sole other possible expedient, that of making a spoon of his hand. The dog neither growled nor pushed away the spoon, but instantly began to gobble twice as fast before, and presently was licking the bottom of the dish. Gibbie's hand, therefore, made but a few journeys to his mouth, but what it carried him was good food, better than any he had had that day. When all was gone, he crept again into the kennel. The dog followed, and soon they were both fast asleep in each other's arms and legs. Come here, Leia. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come on. Shh, shh, shh. Shh. Good girl. Good girl. Okay. Gibbie woke at sunrise and went out. His host came after him and stood wagging his tail and looking wistfully upon his face. Gibbie understood him as the sole return he could make for his hospitality, undid his collar. Instantly he rushed off, his back going like a serpent, cleared the gate at a bound, and, scouring madly across the field, vanished from his sight. Whereupon Gibbie set out to continue his journey up Doorside. That's what his father had said, but he didn't know what it meant. Anyway, this day was warmer. The spring had come a step nearer. The dog had been a comforter to him, and the horror had begun to assuage. He saw someone, off in front of him. Okay, hold on, Leia knocked over a little stick. Oh, wow. Look at how beautiful it is with the sun coming out. It's like this whole panorama. I wish we could all just be here in person for story hour, but yeah, I treasure this time, and I'm so glad for those of you who can join me in it. It's like a break from the weary world. It's not always weary. There's joy in the world as well, of course, all those we love. And we can love everybody. Jesus said, remain in my love. Oh my gosh, I turned it off and I have all these notifications. Leia, shh, 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 shh. Come here. Sit with me. I can't let her off her leash and let her just go. All right. This day was warmer, and the spring had come a step nearer. The dog had been a comforter to him, and the horror had begun to assuage. He had begun to grow aware of the things about him and to open his eyes to them. Once he saw a primrose in a little dell and left the road to look at it. But as he went, he set his foot in the water of a chalybeate spring, which was trickling through the grass and dyeing the ground red about it. Filled with horror, he fled, because he had seen the blood of the other person in the last reading, I think, or the one before. I'm just hearing one of Elliot's songs. My friend Elliot, somebody that I used to know. That's the name of the song. And I mean, anyway. Something about a dying day, but I don't think it's in that song. But as he went, he set his foot in the water of a chalybeate spring, which was trickling through the grass and dyeing the ground red about it. Filled with horror, he fled, and for some time dared never to go near a primrose. And still upon his right hand was the great river, flowing down towards the home he had left. Now through low meadows, now through up-shouldering fields of wheat and oats, now through rocky heights covered with the graceful silver-barked birch, the mountain ash, and the fir. Every time Gibbie, having lost sight of it by its gleam afresh. His first feeling was that it was hurrying to the city where the dead man lay, to tell where Gibbie was, why he, who had from infancy done just as he pleased, should now have begun to dread interference with his liberty he could not himself have told. Perhaps the fear was but the shadow of his newborn aversion to the place where he had seen those best-loved countenances change so suddenly and terribly, cease to smile, but not cease to stare. That second day he fared better, too, than the first, for he came on a family of mongrel gypsies who fed him well out of their kettle, and taken with his looks, thought to keep him for begging purposes, right? They would get lots of money for making him beg. But now that Gibbie's confidence in human nature had been so rudely shaken, he had already begun, with analysis unconscious, to read the human countenance, questioning it, and he thought he saw something that would hurt in the eyes of two of the men and one of the women. Therefore, in the middle of the night, he slipped silently out of the tent of rags in which he had lain down with the gypsy children, and ere the mothers woke, was a mile up the river. Good for him. But I must not attempt the detail of this part of his journey. It is enough that he got through it. He met with some adventures and suffered a good deal from hunger and cold. Had he not been hardy as well as fearless, he must have died. But now from this quarter, now from that, he got all that was needful for one of God's birds, right? Jesus said that. God knows when every sparrow falls to the ground, and a sparrow was like 1 penny for 5 sparrows or 7 or something. He said, aren't you worth so much more than 5 sparrows or 3 sparrows or whatever it was, 3 little birds? No, there's a meaning to his number, so I don't want to mess up his number, but there definitely is, because we have 5 senses, and you're more than your senses. And there's all sorts of different inner meanings. But anyway, he's God's bird, whether he knows it or not. So, but now, from this quarter, now from that, he got all that was needful for one of God's birds. Thank you, God, that you care for us and you provide for us. Once he found in a hedge the nest of an errant and secretive hen, and recognizing the eggs as food authorized by the shop windows and market of the city, soon qualified himself to have an opinion of their worth. Another time he came upon a girl milking a cow in a shed, and his astonishment at the marvels of the process was such that he had forgot even the hunger that was rendering him faint. He had often seen cows in the city, but had never suspected what they were capable of. When the girl caught sight of him staring with an open mouth, she was taken with such a fit of laughter that the cow, which was ill-tempered, kicked out and overturned the pail. Now, because of her troublesomeness, this cow was not milked beside the rest, and the shed where she stood was used by farm implements only. The floor of it was the earth, beaten hard and worn into hollows. When the milk settled in one of these, Gibbie saw that it was lost to the girl, and found to him, undeterred by the astounding nature of the spring from which he had just seen it flow, he threw himself down and drank like a calf. Her laughter ended. The girl was troubled. She would be scolded for her clumsiness in allowing Hockey to kick over the pail, but the eagerness of the boy after the milk troubled her more. She told him to wait, and running to the house, returned with 2 large pieces of oatcake, which she gave him. Thank you, God. When you smile at someone who hasn't seen a smile in a long time, or go hug someone in an old folks' home, or read to them, or give them this video, right? Or sing them songs, or bring food to them, or whatever, you're caring for God. You're You're caring for God. Just to smile. Someone the other day told me my smile lights up the room, and I was having the worst day, but I was so glad that I had smiled. You know, not a fake smile, but anyway. So just reminding someone that their smile does light up the room. You're feeding God. You're nurturing God and God's children. God through his children. Anyway, she gave him one. She gave him 2 large pieces. Thus, one way and another, food came to Gibbie. Drink was to be had in almost any hollow, you know, where the water was. Sleep was scattered everywhere over the world. For warmth, only motion and a seasoned skin was necessary. The latter Gibbie had, the former already a habit learned in the streets, had now become almost a passion. Where? The motion. He loved just running and moving. You know, just like the movement of getting here took forever, but that's okay. Leia, you got it. Rest, because we got to go back. Hold on, there's a piece of glass here. I guess I ought to throw it away. I just don't want her to step on it. Anyway. Chapter 10, The Barn. Oh, thank God. All right. By this time, Gibbie had got well up towards the roots of the hills of Gormgarnet, and the river had dwindled greatly. He was no longer afraid of it, but would lie for hours listening to the murmurs over its pebbly bed, and sometimes even sleep in the hollows of its banks, or below the willows that overhung it. Or below, not below. That's 2 L's. Below the willows that hung. Every here and there, a brown rivulet from some peat bog on a hill, brown and clear, like smoke crystals molten together, flowed into it, and when he had lost it, guided him back to his guide. Just because you came across. Oh, this was plain. Everything reminds me of her. I was at my church, and there's a coffee shop attached to it, and you know, they were just playing music, like Morrissey or something, and I was just about to leave, and they started playing that song, Everything Reminds Me of Her, and I just had my birthday, and like the day after my birthday, I was parked in this random place near the beach where I never am, this one random beach. I just couldn't find a parking spot anywhere. I finally found one, rolled my windows down because I was doing some reading or something, and this guy drove up next to me with his window down and was playing Walk Down Alameda. So I got to talk to him for a second at the stop sign, because it's just, anyway, that's one of my friend Elliot's songs. I'm like, my birthday was yesterday, like I was friends. This is like, you know, and I had just been singing that song yesterday with the day before. This was 2 days after my birthday weekend, right? Anyway, he, it's like messages from heaven. I'll take them. I mean, I haven't heard anyone playing his song for maybe 4 years in a public place. And so two in a matter of 3 days is just 2 days. It happened on a Saturday and then a Sunday. Anyway, just don't limit God, right? So here's the barn. Every here and there, a brown rivulet from some peat bog on a hill, brown and clear, like smoke crystals molten together, flowed into it and when he had lost it, Elliot had a song that says, just because you came across it and lost it. I was in that song that they were playing. Everything reminds me of her this evening. And I think that's the song that he played for me backstage. Either that or one with the airless cell in it, if that's the same song. I mixed those two together. Oh well, okay. I think he played me Oh Well, Okay. It's hard to tell. It's hard to say. Oh well, okay. He reminds me much of Sir Gibbie. You know, just going along, being himself and creating music in this world. All of us are like this in a way, just like Van Gogh is so much like this. He kept creating art even though no one would buy it, right? They didn't value it his whole life, only his brother, It's so strange, right? Now his paintings go for millions, so don't look with your outer eyes, right? You're covered in kisses of the Holy One of God, Greet each other with a holy kiss. The kiss of friendship, of love, of charity. That's agape love. Anyway. All right, so farm after farm he passed. Here, one widely bordering a valley stream, which there another stretching its skirts up the hillsides till they were lost in mere heather, where the sheep wandered about, cropping what stray grass blades and other eatables they could find. Edibles? Eatables. I'm thinking the Scottish old, it looks like eatables. Oh, she tipped over her water. That's okay. I'm sure you had enough. I can get more a little bit if you want. Lower down, he had passed through small towns and large villages. Here, farms and cottages with an occasional country seat and little village of low thatched houses made up the abodes of men. By this time he had become greatly reconciled to the loneliness of nature, and no more was afraid in her solitary presence. At the same time, his heart had begun to ache and long after the communion of his kind, right? We can have that. For not once since he set out, and that seemed months, where it was only weeks, had he had an opportunity of doing anything for anybody except, indeed, unfastening the dog's collar, and not to be able to help was to Gibbie like being dead. He always was helping people in the city. The drunk people, he walked them home so they wouldn't fall in a ditch, drunk. And in the city, he helped the town crier to find stuff that was lost and return it to people. So he was always helpful, running around. Now he missed that. Anyway. Everybody, down to the dogs, had been doing for him, and what was to become of him? It was a state altogether of servitude into which he had fallen. May had now set in, but up here among the hills, she was May by courtesy only, or if she was May, she would never be might. She was indeed only April, with her showers and sunshine, her tearful, childish laughter, and again the frown, and the despair irremediable. Nay, as she still kept up a secret correspondence with her cousin March, March and April, right? Banished for his rudeness, she would not very seldom shake from her skirts a snowstorm, and oftener the dancing hail. Then out would come the sun behind her and laugh and say, I could not help that, but here I am all the same, coming to you as fast as I can. The green crops were growing darker, and the trees were all getting out their nets to catch carbon. The lambs were frolicking, and in sheltered places the flowers were turning the earth into a firmament. And now a mere daisy was enough to delight the heart of Gibbie, his joy in humanity so suddenly checked, and his thirst for it left unslaked. He had begun to see the human look in the face of the commonest flowers, to love the trusting stare of the daisy, that gold-hearted boy, and the gentle despondency of the girl harebell, dreaming of her mother, the azure. The wind, of which he had scarce thought as he met it, roaming the streets like himself, was now a friend of his solitude, bringing him sweet odors, alive with the souls of bees, and cooling with the heat of the long walk. Even when it blew cold along the waste moss, waving the heads of the cotton grass, the only live thing visible, it was a lover, and kissed him on the forehead. More kisses. Not that Gibbie knew what a kiss was any more than he knew about the souls of bees. He did not remember ever having been kissed. In that granite city, the women were not much given to kissing children, even their own, but if they had been, who of them would have thought of kissing Gibbie? Oh, wow. God is so good. I felt so silly for buying this because I didn't want to spend the money for all sorts of reasons. But anyway, I did. And then I wore it today. And here's The kisses for you and for me. I'm covered with kisses. Cover me in sunshine. This is like, you have no idea what a miracle this is, because I was just, anyway, I go through periods of not buying stuff, and that period was over, but I still was, you still, when you're in a fast or something, you get in that place where you have to integrate back into real life. Not real life. The fast is part of real life. Anyway, who in the city would have kissed him, right? Thought of kissing Gibbie. The baker's wife, kind as she always was to him, would have thought it defilement to press her lips to those of the beggar child, because they look down on people and not even realizing they are. And how is any child to thrive without kisses? The first caress Gibbie ever knew was as such were given him by Mother Nature herself. It was only, however, by degrees, though indeed rapid degrees, that he became capable of them. In the first part of his journey, he was stunned, stupid, lost in change, distracted between a suddenly vanished past and a future slowly dawning in the present. He felt little beyond hunger and that vague urging up doorside, with occasional shoots of pleasure from kindness, mostly of women and dog. He was less shy of the country people by this time, but he did not care to seek them. He thought them not nearly so friendly and as good as the town people, forgetting that these knew him and those did not. All the town people knew him. He was a fixture in the town. Anyway, to Gibbie, an introduction was the last thing necessary for anyone who wore a face. He didn't think you needed an introduction, right? And he could not understand why they looked at him so. Whatever is capable of aspiring must be troubled that it may wake and aspire, then troubled still that it may hold fast, be itself and aspire still. What does that mean? Someone write it in the comments if you understood what that meant. Whatever is, like, all these people are aspiring or something. Whatever is capable of aspiring must be troubled that it may wake and aspire, then troubled still that it may hold fast, be itself and aspire still. Like, maybe to keep everything you've aspired to get in your house and keep going after that. I don't know. One evening, his path vanished between twilight and moonrise, and just as it had become dark, he found himself at a rough gate, through which he saw a field. There was a pretty tall hedge on each side of the gate, and he was now a sufficiently experienced traveler to conclude that he was not far from some human abode. He climbed the gate and found himself in a field of clover. Wow. It was splendid. A splendid big bed, and even had the night not been warm, he would not have hesitated to sleep in it. He had never had a cold and had as little fear for health as for his life. He was hungry, it is true, but although food was doubtless more delicious to such hunger as his, that of the whole body, than it can be to the mere palate, the culinary imagination of an epicure, it was not so necessary to him that he could not go to sleep without it. So down he lay in the clover and was at once unconscious. When he woke, the moon was high in the heavens and had melted the veil of the darkness from the scene of still, well-ordered comfort. Come here. Shh. Stop whining. You're fine. Hold on, I'll give her a little more room. The lambs were frolicking in sheltered places. Let me see where it was. Oh no, I'm over here, sorry. I'm like, that sounded familiar. When he woke, the moon was high. Okay, a short distance from his couch stood a little army of ricks, between 20 and 30 of them, constructed perfectly, smooth and upright, and round and large, each with its conical top netted in with straw rope. I don't know what that is. Hold on. and finished off with what the herd boy called topican, a neatly tied and trimmed tuft of the straw, with which it was thatched, answering to the stone ball on the top of a gable. Like triangles, their summits stood out against the pale blue moon diluted air. They were treasure caves hollowed of space and stored with the best of ammunition against the armies of hunger and want. But Gibbie, though he had seen many of them, did not know what they were. He had seen straw used for the bedding of cattle and horses, and supposed that that was the chief end of such ricks. What are they? Were they storehouses? No. Nor had he any clear idea that the cattle themselves were kept for any other object than to make them comfortable and happy. He didn't know that they were kept for food for later, or milk. He had stood behind their house in the dark and had heard them munching and grinding away even in the night. Probably the country was for the cattle, as the towns for the men, and that would explain why the country people were so inferior. While he stood gazing, a wind arose behind the hills and came blowing down some glen that opened northwards. Gibbie felt it cold and sought the shelter of the ricks. Hey, come here. Oh, she's up here. You want to sit on my lap? Okay, girl. Yeah. You want to kiss my face? Okay, 2 kisses. Thank you, Leia. All right. Okay, shh. No kissing my mouth. Okay. Come here. Good girl. Good girl. You got this all dirty. I'll have to wash it. That's okay. Come here. Come here. Sit. Good girl. Good girl. Oh, sorry. Did you want me to take this off? Hold on. She's got a stick in her tail. Okay, got it. Good girl. Good girl. Is that all you wanted? Did you want that? No, my pants are all dirty. All right. Okay, so Gibbie felt it cold and sought the shelter of the ricks. Great and solemn they looked as he drew nigh, near each other, yet enough apart for plenty of the air to flow and eddy between. Over a low wall of unmortared stones he entered their ranks. Above him, as he looked up from their broad base, they ascended huge as pyramids and peopled the waste air with giant forms. How warm it was in the round, winding paths amongst the fruitful piles. Tombs these, no cenotaphs. He wondered about them now in a dusky yellow gloom, and now in the cold blue moonlight, which they seemed to warm. At length he discovered that which the huge things were flanked, on one side by a long low house, in which there was a door horizontally divided into 2 parts. Gibbie would fain have got in to try whether the place was good for sleep, but he found both halves fast, locked. In the lower half, however, he spied a hole which, though not so large, reminded him of the entrance to the kennel of his dog house. But alas, it had a door too, shut from the inside. There might be some way of opening it. He felt about and soon discovered that there was a sliding valve, which he could push to either side. It was, in fact, the cat's door, especially constructed for her convenience of entrance and exit. For the cat is the guardian of the barn. The grain which tempts the rats and mice is no temptation to her. The rats and mice themselves are. Upon them she executes justice and remains herself an incorruptible, because untempted, therefore a respectable member of the farm community. Only the dairy door must be kept shut, that had no cat wicket in it. My grandma always had wild cats, and she'd feed them scraps. They were just wild around the farm. Anyway. The hole was a small one, but tempting to the wee baronet. He might perhaps be able to squeeze himself through. He tried and succeeded, though with some little difficulty. The moon was there before him, shining through a pane or 2 of glass over the door, and by her light on the hard brown clay floor, Gibbie saw where he was. Though if he had been told he was in the barn, he would neither have felt nor been at all the wiser. It was a very old-fashioned barn. About a third of it was floored with wood, dark with age. almost as brown as the clay, for threshing upon with flails. At that labor 2 men had been busy during most of the preceding day, and that was how, in the same end of the barn, rose a great heap of oat straw, showing in the light of the moon like a mound of pale gold. Had Gibbie had any education in the marvelous, he might now, in the midnight and moonlight, have well imagined himself in some treasure house of the gnomes. What he saw in the other corner was still liker gold, and was indeed greater than gold, for it was life, the heap, namely of corn, threshed from the straw. Gibbie recognized this as what he had seen given to horses, but now the temptation to sleep, with such facilities presented, was overpowering and took from him all desire to examine further. He shot into the middle of the loose heap of straw and vanished from the glimpses of the moon, burrowing like a mole. In the heart of the golden warmth, he lay so dry and comfortable that, notwithstanding his hunger had waked with him, he was presently in a faster sleep than before. And indeed, what more luxurious bed, or what bed conducive to softer slumber, was there in the world to find? The moving moon went down the sky, and the cold wind softened and grew still. The stars swelled out larger. The rats came, and then came the cat puss. And the rats went with a scuffle and squatter. The pagan gray came in like a sleepwalker. I don't know what that is. And made the barn dreary as a dull dream. Then the horses began to fidget with their big feet, the cattle to low with their great trombone throats, and the cocks to crow as if to give warning for the last time against the devil, the world, and the flesh. The men in the adjoining chamber woke, yawned, stretched themselves mightily, and rose. The godlike sun rose after them and entered the barn with them, drove out the gray, and through it the orphan lay warm in God's keeping and in his nest of straw, like the butterfly of a huge chrysalis. Wow, that's like foreshadowing. Anyway, when at length Gibbie became once more aware of existence, it was through a stormy invasion of the still realm of sleep. The blows of 2 flails fell, persistent and quick following, first on the thick head of the sheaf of oats, untied and cast down before them, then grew louder and more deafening as the oats flew and the chaff fluttered, and the straw flattened and broke and thinned and spread, until at last they thundered in great hard blows on the wooden floor. It was the first of these last blows that shook Gibbie awake. What they were or indicated he could not tell. He warmed himself softly round in the straw to look out and see. Now, whether it was that sleep was yet heavy upon him and bewildered his eyes, or that his imagination had in dreams been busy with foregone horrors, because he has PTSD from what he experienced, Post-traumatic stress disorder is what PTSD is. I don't know what it is in other countries, if it's named the same or a different acronym. It's like what soldiers have after battles. Anyway, horrors. I cannot tell, but as he peered through the meshes of the crossing and blinding straws, what he seemed to see was the body of an old man with disheveled hair, whom, prostrate on the ground, they were beating to death with great sticks. His tongue clave to the roof of his mouth. Not a sound could he utter, not a finger could he move. He froze. That's what you do with fear. He had no choice but to lie still and witness the fierce enormity. But it is good that we are compelled to see some things, life amongst the rest, to what we call the end of them. By degrees, Gibbie's sight cleared. The old man faded away, and what was left of him he could see to be only an armful of straw. They were just, taking the chaff from the wheat. They're on the threshing floor. It wasn't a person at all. The next sheaf they threw down, he perceived under their blows the corn flying out of it, and began to understand a little. When it was finished, the corn that had flown, dancing from its home like hail from its cloud, was swept aside to the common heap, and the straw tossed up in the mound that harbored Gibbie. It was well that the men with the pitchfork did not spy his eyes peering out from the midst of the straw. He might have taken him. Hold on. For some wild creature and driven the prongs into him. As it was, Gibbie did not altogether like the look of him, and lay still as a stone. Then another sheaf was unbound and cast on the floor, and the blows of the flails began again. It went on thus for an hour and a half, and Gibbie, although he dropped to sleep several times, was nearly stupid with the noise. The men at length, however, swept up the corn and tossed up the straw for the last time and went out. Gibbie, judging by his own desires, thought they must have gone to eat, but did not follow them, having generally been ordered away the moment he was seen in a farmyard. He crept out, however, and began to look about him, first of all for something he could eat. The oats looked like the most likely, and he took a mouthful for a trial. He grounded them severely, so these are like steel cut oats. They're not, just even. Anyway, but hungry as he was, he failed to find oats good for food. Their hard husks, their dryness, their instability, all slipping past each other at every attempt to crush them with his teeth, together foiled him utterly. He must search farther. Looking round him afresh, he saw an open loft, and climbing up the heap in which he had slept, managed to reach it. It was the height of the walls, and the couples of the roof rose immediately from it. At the farther end was a heap of hay, which he took for another kind of straw. Then he spied something he knew. A row of cheeses lay on a shelf, suspended from the rafters, ripening. Gibbie knew them well from the shop windows. He knew they were cheese and good to eat, though whence and how they came he did not know, his impression being that they grew in the fields like the turnips. So he's thinking that they're for him, He had still the notion, uncorrected, that things in the country belonged to nobody in particular and were mostly for the use of animals, which, since he had become a wanderer, he had almost come to class himself. He was very hungry. He pounced upon a cheese and lifted it between his two hands. It smelled good, but felt very hard. That was no matter. What else were teeth made strong and sharp for? He tried them on one of the round edges and nibbling actively, soon got through to the softer body of the cheese. But he had not got much farther when he heard the men returning and desisted, afraid of being discovered by the noise he made. The readiest way to conceal himself was to lie down flat on the loft, and he did so just where he could see the threshing floor over the edge of it by lifting his head. This, however, he scarcely ventured to do, and all he could see as he lay was the tip of the swing bar of one of the flails ever as it reached the highest point of its ascent. But to watch it, for very soon, ceased to be interesting, and although he had eaten so little of the cheese, it had yet been enough to make him dreadfully thirsty. Therefore, he greatly desired to get away. But he dared not go down with their sticks. These men might knock him over in a moment. So he lay there thinking of the poor little hedgehog he had seen on the road as he came, how he stood watching it and wishing he had a suit made of all great pins, the porcupine, basically, which he could set up when he pleased, and how the driver of a cart, catching sight of him at the foot of the hedge, gave him a blow with his whip, and poor fellow, notwithstanding his clothes of pen, that one blow of a whip was too much for him. There seemed nothing in the world but killing. This is his perspective had changed, His father had died, his mom died before when he was little and didn't know her, not well. At length, he could, unoccupied with something else, bear his thirst no longer, and squirming round on the floor, crept softly toward the other end of the loft to see what was to be seen there. He found that the heap of hay was not in the loft at all. It filled a small chamber in the stable, in fact, and when Gibbie clambered upon it, what should he see below him on the other side but a beautiful white horse, eating some of the same sort of stuff he was now lying upon. Beyond, he could see the backs of more horses, but they were very different, big and clumsy, not white. They were all eating, and this was their food on which he lay. He wished, too, he could eat it, and tried, but found it even less satisfactory than the oats, for it nearly choked him and set him coughing, so that he was in considerable danger of betraying his presence to the men in the barn. How did the horse manage to get such dry stuff down their throats? But the cheese was dry too, and he could eat that. No doubt the cheese as well as the fine straw was there for the horses. Hold on, someone's playing a song up there. Anyway, I just don't want my do you believe in life after love? This is the song that's playing. I don't want my video to get flagged. I'm almost done. This is the end of this chapter right here. And we'll stop there, but the cheese was dry too, and he could eat that. No doubt the cheese was as well as the fine straw was for these horses. He would like to see the beautiful white creature down there eat a bit of it, but with all his big teeth, he did not think he could manage a whole cheese, and how to get a piece broken off for him with these men there he could not devise. It would want a long-handled hammer like those which he had seen men breaking stones on the road. A door opened beyond, and a man came in and led 2 of the horses out, leaving the door open. Gibbie clambered down from the top of the hay into the stall beside the white horse and ran out. He was almost in the fields, had not even a fence to cross. He cast a glance around and went straight for a neighboring hollow where, taught by experience, he hoped to find water. All right, look, we got our kisses today. The next chapter, this was the barn. The next chapter is called Janet. Oh, Janet is wonderful. I'll tell you ahead of time. Wait, I think if Janet's the mom, I'm not sure. I think it's so. Anyway, we're getting to know Sir Gibbie now, and so all his deeds will be more meaningful for us later. Anyway, I don't want to do any spoilers. I wish you so much love. Thanks for being here. Much love.